Hello, this is Lights126 Reloaded. Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I have to say this. This movie is stale in certain areas, but it's important. I don't just want to be a loyalist to anything. I don't want to just expand and over-exaggerate I don't want to just exalt my favorites. Star Wars Episode 1 is not my favorite, but at least it holds up to some degree. I'm not going to ignore, however, its faults, nor will I scorn it as the worst thing that has come to cinema in 1999. You know, a lot of people right off the bat have been used to how Star Wars went. They've seen the original trilogy. They did not expect Episode 1 to go the way that they thought Star Wars usually went. The fast-paced action, the drill. Episode 1 was a far different story with a far different tone and a far different direction. And that's why I think a lot of people just was probably turned off by it, because it was so different. It wasn't usual. People seen Episode 6, that was the last Star Wars movie before the release of The Phantom Menace in 1999. To me, this movie is not the greatest. However, to a degree, it has enough merit to pass. But just the flow, the flavor, it is not as intense as the previous movies. Narratively, from Anakin to how the government was going, it succeeded in that regard. One of the most important scenes in the saga was Anakin leaving his mother. You see, when you have the original trilogy as background knowledge, once you see everything laid out, if people was to just look from 1 to 6, they get a complete story. Now, the original trilogy works as its own complete story, but when you add in the prequels, it doesn't really harm the flow of the original trilogy if you was to put it back to back. In Episode 1, Anakin leaving his mother will go on to be carried on to Episode 2 when he feels compelled to return to his mother because he sensed that she's in danger. Then when he finds out that his mother has perished to Tusken Raiders, that's when he starts descending into the dark side. Not completely, but it was the ember that ignited everything. That love, that connection he had with his mother in Episode 1 laid the foundation for him to start his path towards the dark side. That passion, that attachment is what would be the essence that will make him turn on the Emperor in Episode 6. In the beginning of his life, he had his mother, and at the end of his life, he had his son. And for his attachment to his mother, I felt that him being 9 years old, I can defend what it's like from the perspective of a child to leave his mother. It's more emotional, it's more impactful. People say he should have been much older, but the impact is nothing compared to leaving your mother as a child. Who leaves their mother as a child? I can go on and say that the dialogue, the movie works in stiff manners, that it's not so compelling and fun like the originals. Yes, it's supposed to be a different era, but it should still have the flair like the originals. But however, I can say that the direction is nonetheless efficient. However, people want to say that Andor is just the best thing ever, yet people have to be patient with it. I mean, think about it. For how Andor went with this direction, would people praise it as much as they would now, given all the stuff that came before, all the shows that came before? People might praise it for its merit, but would they feel like it's this Star Wars for how people have to be patient from episode to episode? People criticize Rogue One, but the very thing that people have criticized Star Wars Episode 1 with the politics, I believe they would criticize Andor if it was a movie released in 1999. So to me, Episode 1 is a congruent part of the Star Wars universe. It added a lot to the universe with the battle droids and the different ships. A lot of older fans who are really passionate with the kind of things that they seen in the original trilogy, they didn't really care for with the prequels. The direction was all too different, like I said. That difference would compel them to write off George Lucas as destroying their childhood. It's not like how it used to be. Why is it different? Well, that's just how George Lucas made it. Sadly, however, the payoff finally came in 2005 when it all just made sense where Episode 1 was leading with. Yes, I can admit the ending was all over the place. Even George Lucas admit he went too far in a few places. And I think many of the criticisms of episode one really are legitimate. But I think there are some good defenses for the movie. This movie can be slow for the average person, but once you understand the movie, it goes at a moderate speed. So the average person won't really grasp on to what they're watching. That's why people would say it is inferior to the original trilogy, and it is. It's not the best Star Wars movie, not to me anyway. It really takes a lot of the audience patience, but it has a lot of essential elements that I believe works to the degree of what George Lucas was trying to tell. And he's doing it to just promote his brand, to make money off his brand. But this movie, I don't think this trilogy he really had to do. But he knew that people wanted more Star Wars, and he had something to tell. So I believe this movie was not no corporate sludge like what we see of Star Wars today. Some of it was made for entertainment purposes, like the Book of Boba Fett, that was just simply made because content. For how people view this movie, many people probably, the most common person probably don't really have a problem with The Phantom Menace. It just don't hold up with a lot of merit compared to the originals. But as of the 4th, May the 4th, it got a profit from theaters. It succeeded in its re-release. So the likes of George Lucas' Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, The Phantom Menace, this win in theaters. George Lucas' Star Wars will always be the backbone of this franchise, 1 through 6. When people suggest that machete order on how to watch Star Wars, some people suggest skip episode 1. Don't skip episode 1. I repeat, do not skip episode 1. Anakin and his mother is a important piece to the story. Here's what I would recommend. Watch this movie with more analytical eyes. To me, there's a story to gain from looking at The Phantom Menace. You just have to be a little bit more patient with it. This is Lights 126 saying to all of one.